One of the most useful applications of PHP is processing user input from an online form. In this chapter and the next, we'll take a deep dive into sending the contents of a feedback form to an email address. This is contact.php, which you can find in the chapter 9 09_01 folder of the exercise files. It contains a simple HTML feedback form. What happens to the data in an online form depends on whether it's submitted using the POST or GET method. So let's begin by looking at the difference between the two methods. By default, forms are submitted using the GET method, but it's common practice to specify which method you want to use by adding the method attribute to the opening form tag. So here on line 11, method has been set explicitly to the GET method. The action attribute, which is also in the opening form tag, tells the browser where to send the data for processing. Usually this is the address of a script that checks the data and then handles it in some way or another, such as emailing it or inserting it into a database. My preference, though, is to add the processing script in a conditional statement above the doc type and execute the code only when the form has been submitted. This is what's known as a self-processing form, and it makes it easy to redisplay the form if there are any errors. Leaving the value of the action attribute empty results in the page reloading, and this was valid in HTML4, but in HTML5 the action attribute must always have a value. Now we could just type in the name of the page that the form is in, but PHP has a useful preset variable we can use instead. So between the quotes of the action attribute, I'm going to add the PHP shortcut for echo, and then inside there a variable. So we begin with a $, then an underscore, and all in uppercase, server. Then a pair of square brackets and quotes, and between those quotes also in uppercase PHP_self. And this will automatically include the path to the current file in the action attribute. Server is one of PHP's superglobal arrays, which are always available in any script. The names of all the superglobal arrays are always in uppercase, and with one exception, they all begin with an underscore. The server superglobal array gets information from the web server. It has a lot of elements, but not all of them are supported by every server. But this one, PHP self, is always available, and using this instead of hard-coding the file name is useful because you never have to worry about changing its value if you rename your files. There are two other superglobal arrays that are useful when working with forms, and they take their names from the GET and the POST methods, and they capture the data that's submitted by the form. So let's use the POST and GET arrays. Let's inspect them. Down at the bottom of the form, between these two pre-tags, I'm going to add a PHP block and then a conditional statement. And I'm going to check the value of the GET array. So if the GET array has got any values in it, we'll echo content of the GET array, followed by a line break. And then we'll use the printr function to inspect the content of that GET array. We also want to check if the POST array has got any values, so we'll check for POST, and between those curly braces we want to do the same. Just copy that, paste that in there, and change GET to POST. It's very important when you're using the GET and POST arrays to make sure that you use uppercase. If you try to mix uppercase and lowercase or put it all in lowercase, it won't work. These variables, like all PHP variables, are case sensitive. The GET and POST arrays are always created by PHP, but they don't contain any elements if a form hasn't been submitted by the relevant method, and PHP treats an empty array as false. But if the form has been submitted using the GET method, the GET array will have values and will display those values. Otherwise, if it's been submitted using the POST method, we'll display the values submitted by the POST method. And if the form hasn't been submitted, neither of these will be executed. And both the GET array and the POST array use the name attribute of each form element to identify the value that's been submitted. So if we look at this form, the name attribute of the first input element is name, so it will be in the get array as name or in the post array as name. The next one is email, and the last one is comments. And it's very important that the name attribute of each input element in a form doesn't have any spaces in it. It can't have spaces. So let's save those changes and then view the page in a browser. Here is that contact form. Because nothing has been submitted, nothing is displayed down here. But if I fill in the fields and then a simple comment and then click the submit button, it now displays the content of the get array, and name is David, email is david@example.com. There are the comments. It also includes the submit button. So send is the name of the submit button and send comments is the value. That's the value that's displayed here. But notice also that at the end of the URL there is now a question mark, and those values have been appended to the end of the URL in what's known as a query string, and they're in name value pairs. So name equals David and email equals David, and then this %40 is a way of encoding in a URL the @ mark. Example.com, and then the comments, there are the comments, and also the name of the submit button. So when a form is submitted using the get method, all of the information is included in the URL. So let's go back to the editing program and see what happens when we send it using the post method. So change get to post, save that, go back to the browser. This time I will enter my name and I'll leave out email and have a different comment, and then submit the form. And here is the content of the post array. See that name has been submitted. Email is submitted even though it doesn't have any value, so it's still part of the array. Would also be part of the get array if we were submitting using the get method, and then the comments and the value of the submit button. But notice the URL. Nothing is appended to the URL. There is no query string. Everything is sent with the headers of the page for processing. So that's the post and the get method. The post and get superglobal arrays capture the values that have been submitted by a form using the post and get methods respectively. The name attribute of each form element is used as the array key. Although the post array is used only with forms, the get array captures all name value pairs appended to the URL as a query string, so the values could also come from another source, such as name value pairs attached to the end of a URL in a link. As a general rule, the get method should be used only for search forms because the data is exposed in the URL and can be bookmarked. Use the post method for sending emails or for inserting records into a database.